Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Escape from the Moon, a small box card game coming from publisher Salt and Pepper Games. This is, to my knowledge, the second originally Japanese published game. This is coming from Ju Game Studios out of Japan, that they have localized for both Spanish-speaking and English-speaking audiences. The first was Unreliable Wizard, which had a very, very successful crowdfunding campaign. Escape from the Moon is, as I said, a small card game. This is a solo-only game. Let me show you how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, here you see Escape from the Moon set up. Your goal in Escape from the Moon is to move from your starting point, which is here. This card represents you as a player, and you are going to try to make a successful escape from this rocket. To do so, you're going to have to be moving throughout these sector cards, doing successful searches, which may add valuable items to your deck of cards, and you have to successfully activate both of these two locations that have a search value of 12 before you can even attempt to make that successful escape in the rocket by doing a search of a value of 15. So throughout the game, you're going to be going through this round sequence where you're drawing 3 cards from the start of the deck at the beginning of every round, except for the first round, discarding down to 6 if you're ever above that, and then you're going to be moving and then doing searches. All right, so you don't do those first 3 cards because you draw 5 at the beginning of the deck. This is a randomized setup where you take the sector cards, you shuffle them, you randomly choose one of the 8 oxygen cards to shuffle in there with them, and then you lay them out from left to right, bottom to top. There are 6 cards in the oxygen supply. You notice I said 8 and I've only spoken about 7. One of them gets removed randomly at the beginning of the game. Normally you wouldn't look at these, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to show you that the back of these oxygen cards have some kind of an event. Most of them are negative, like this meteorite, that you would have to do what the card tells you to be able to remove this from your hand, otherwise cluttering up your hand. But there are at least 1 or 2 neutral to maybe even positive, depending upon the situation, oxygen event cards. But most of them you have to assume are negative. All right, so you're going to be playing cards from your hand to either move or search. When you're moving, you're going to be counting orthogonally. You cannot move diagonally, and each sector card is a point. So, for example, if I wanted to move to this sector card, that would cost me 2 movement points. This happened to be my starting hand, my 5 out of my 8 starting cards. And so if I wanted to move there, I'd have to spend 2 movement points. I can either do that by discarding this value 2 card or 2 of these value 1 search cards. So let's say that I decided I'm going to just spend these. When you spend cards for movement, you put them right into the discard pile, and then I move my 2 spaces, 1, 2. If there's ever a point where a card has been removed, you still have to count any empty spaces. So now that I've moved, I can attempt a search in this sector. What this number tells you is that I need a value 4 to search. When we look at our search cards, we see what the value of that card is towards a search in the upper left. So this is worth a value of 2 towards a search. However, you have to pay a cost to put a card into your play area. So this is different than moving, where you just throw those into your discard pile. This is saying you have to discard 2 cards to get this card into your active play area. So let's say I did that. I went in and put that there. I discarded these last 2 cards. I would then check to see, is this a successful search or not? Well, I have a value of 2, I need 4, so no, it's not a successful search. So I would have to come back to the beginning of the round sequence, draw my 3 cards, and then I could try again, all right? In this case, let's say I was able to do it. Hey, use that search card by discarding these 2. Now I've got a successful search. If you have a successful search, you have a couple of options. You can either flip the card over and take it as an item, meaning putting it face up into your hand right away. So this is a card that gives me 1 on a move value, 1 on a search value, so just a normal 1-to-1 card. However, this one has a special ability on it, which says that whenever you do a search action using this card, you can remove 1 card from your hand in the game, and oftentimes that's going to be used to remove one of those negative events that are cluttering up your hand. So you could just put that directly into your hand, or you can remove any of these cards that have been flipped, successfully searched, to do an upgrade to any of the cards in your discard pile. So if I wanted to do that, I would choose any of these cards and I would flip it to the upgraded search side. Now, this gives me a value of 3, both towards movement and searching. And if I use it for a search, it's only 1 card discarded to get that value. So obviously a better version of the card. So you're going to have that choice every time that you successfully complete a search. You're going to continue on through this process, having to be able to successfully launch both of these programs before trying the escape point to be able to be successful. If you ever run out of oxygen cards and don't have any more in your player deck, then you will fail. Well, how do these oxygen cards get spent? Exactly in a situation like this. I did a successful search. These cards go into the discard pile. I can always put cards in the discard pile in any order I want. In this case, it doesn't really matter because they're both the same card. And then what I would do is I can't draw 3 cards, so I would take all of these cards, keeping them in the order they were discarded, turn them face down, take one of these oxygen cards and put it face down at the bottom of the deck, and now I would begin again. So that's how you burn through oxygen, by going through your deck, essentially. All right, that gives you the basics of Escape from the Moon. There are some scenarios that they've included here with the game to make the game either easy, if you want to do a training mission where you essentially can't lose, or more difficult, giving you more challenges and giving you some little kind of score matrices that you are building towards. Speaking of score, if you are successful, then you're going to be getting a score by adding up the blue banners of the cards that you have successfully searched, and then some cards might potentially have medals on them, which you can collect sets of to increase your score. All right, that'll do it. Let's head back and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, well there you see the basics of Escape from the Moon, a solo-only game coming from originally a Japanese publisher that now has been localized for English and Spanish-speaking audiences by Salt and Pepper Games. And I mentioned during the intro another game that Salt and Pepper brought to the Spanish and English-speaking audiences, which was Unreliable Wizard. I'm going to do my best to make really no comparisons between the games other than kind of their origin story, because they're both pretty different games. Escape from the Moon is a game that is really about a central loop, a central kind of logistical puzzle that you're trying to solve. So it's a deck building game, essentially, where you are trying to optimize your deck so that you can successfully complete a series of searches, okay? And you're trying to do so in the most efficient manner possible so that you're not running out of oxygen and ultimately losing the game as a result of that. And so within that core loop of essentially drawing cards at the beginning of a round, moving and doing searches, the central decision space is relatively small, okay? And the puzzle, not terribly variable. This is a game where you are essentially trying to do the same thing every time. Now, there are some scenarios, I mentioned that in the overview, that kind of change things up a little bit. But this is a game that has a relatively narrow focus and a relatively narrow decision space. Your enjoyment or lack thereof of the game, I think, is really going to come down to how much do you enjoy that core loop of building the efficient deck to be able to get to a successful conclusion as quickly as possible, and maybe, you know, start working on the scores once you feel like you've kind of gotten an idea on how the game plays out. There's a couple of reasons I say that. Number one is that once you've played the game a couple of times, you're always going to know what is on the back of these sector cards, right? I mean, you won't know it the first time you play that at the back of this Sector 3 is an ID badge, but you're going to know it after you've played it a few times. So it's kind of the mystery of what is behind these cards, and they play into that a little bit by giving you a little bit of a clue here. That's cool for the first game, or maybe two, but beyond that, it really is not going to factor in, because you'll know what those cards are. The oxygen cards will always be a bit of a mystery. You don't know which ones. You don't know if it's the negative ones, although it's more likely to be negative than not. So everything is relatively tightly contained, self-contained, not a huge decision space. So some of the bigger decision points you're going to make is, okay, do I want to have a larger deck? Do I want to build a larger deck so that I'm going through the oxygen less often? And so you're going to be keeping the item cards rather than upgrading your other search cards in that case, if you're trying for that strategy. So that's one thing you have to think about. Or do I want to just kind of get through it lean and quickly as possible? Get a couple of items, upgrade a couple of my search cards, and then just try to speed run it as much as I can, not really caring if I get down to my last oxygen card or not, as long as I successfully activate both of those programs and then complete the successful launch. So you've got that as a decision space. You've got maybe what cards you're going to be focusing on first, other than one over the other. So beyond that, there's not a tremendous amount of decision space. So it's all about that core loop. How compelling is that core loop to you? Well, speaking for myself, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy kind of this idea of, all right, I have to decide what my strategy is at the beginning of the game, and sometimes that's going to really be determined by the layout of those sector cards. Certain layouts, I think, may kind of point you in a particular direction or another. But beyond that, which cards am I going to be going for? Okay, once I've kind of determined that, what are going to be the best cards to get me there? And again, after you've played it a few times, you kind of know. You kind of know what the best cards are going to be. And so it's just a matter of, are you successfully discarding cards in a way that's going to get you the cards you need when you need them? That's a decision point. I do like the fact that you are able to put your cards, discarded cards, in the order that you choose so that you have a better idea of what's going to be coming about when you go through your deck again. So that's cool. So I like it. I like the loop. I like the core loop. I like the central design of the game. I just don't know that there's enough here to sustain repeated plays. I think this game has a pretty limited shelf life for me. And so I do have to take that into account for sure. Although I like the design, I like the core loop of the game, I don't feel like there's enough in this game to keep me coming back, okay? Components, I have no complaints with. Very nice quality cards, easy to read the numbers, very simple to understand. They even, in the scenario booklet, a separate booklet from the rules, they go into more detail about what each card means. So all of that is good. No complaints about the components. They came with sleeves, okay? I don't know if every copy did, but my copy came with sleeves included, and so that's great. And in a game where you will be shuffling a lot, I think that that's pretty important. I'm not always a card sleever, but games that you shuffle a lot, I am. So that's good. No complaints there. Nice small package, not bigger than it needs to be, not too small. Sleeved cards fit in there just fine with actually room to spare, but not so much that it's a wasted box space. So all that's good, but the core design and the decision space is just too limited for me to give it a recommendation. I'm going to be giving it a 6 because I got a good few plays out of it, and who knows, if I'm in the mood for a quick solo game that I don't have to break my brain to get through, I might pull this off the shelf once in a while, but it's not going to be one I'm coming back to very often. So that's why it's going to get a 6 for me. All right, that's going to do it. I'm Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex.
everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.